The Financial and Fiscal Commission has released its 2026-2027 Division of Revenue Submission, calling for sustainable development across all spheres of government. This as South Africa faces mounting challenges, including climate change, infrastructure backlogs, and rapid urbanization. At the core of the report, a clear warning that finance must follow function. Without aligning funding to responsibilities, service delivery fails and public trust gets eroded. Joining us now to unpack the Commission's key findings and recommendations is Dr Nombeko Mbava, who is the chairperson of the FFC. A very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much, good to be here.
One of the biggest issues over the years has been how, although the law is in support of your function, the FFC never really got, one, the recognition that it deserves, and that government hardly ever listens to what the FFC has to say. In other words, it should come as no wonder that you have come with some of the issues we are going to discuss now. Just your sense about whether, in fact, you do get the recognition that you deserve and you feel that you are being listened to, given the role you have to play.
No, thank you so much for that. In the earlier days, the FFC, the Fiscal Commission, really was groundbreaking in the way that it informed our intergovernmental fiscal relations. The formulas that we used to cut the cake across the three spheres of government was the brainchild of the FFC. The recommendations on local government, equitable share, was the brainchild of the FFC. So in the earlier years, the FFC was a force to be reckoned with. And moving on in the last few years, because the FFC has broadened its wings, not to just focus on the equitable division of revenue per se, but on other financial and fiscal matters, which have fiscal implications. And those recommendations are essentially directed to the executive, right? It is the ministers who must implement them. So there was this notion that the FFC must deal directly with the executive, whereas in our mandate, we deal directly with Parliament and provincial legislatures. So it is Parliament then who must hold accountable those ministers that we are directing our recommendations to implement our recommendations. So it is about the implementation of the recommendations that has not really found traction. But the recommendations themselves, they remain cogent, strong, and coherent.
I guess then, by extension or implicit in what you're saying, is that as with a whole lot of other things, it's an open secret. The former Chief Justice Zondo said this, and so did his predecessor, Mogoeng, that for a lot of time in the past, the legislature, the national legislature in particular, kind of ceded its responsibilities to other people. In other words, it didn't do what is expected of it. As a result, you had the Constitutional Court, the courts in general, and the Constitutional Court in particular have to do that which the legislature failed to do. Have you then, or have you since, been able to get to an understanding with Parliament that you can only go this far and no further? It is up to them to actually act on your recommendation. Absolutely.
Since my term at the FFC, my mantra has been to engage the Speaker of Parliament, the chairpersons of the committees, to bring it to their attention that actually we are making our recommendations to the executive, but through you, because you have the power to hold them accountable. There's also been a notion that it's the Minister of Finance who must hold the other ministers accountable, which is not the case, because they are his counterparts. So he's also the recipient as well of our recommendations. But ultimately, it is the committees in Parliament who have to convene a committee or a meeting to say, these are the recommendations of the FFC, what have you done about them? That is where now we are trying to work with Parliament through the Speaker of Parliament. Because we do believe that our recommendations, many of them, in some of the problems and challenges that we have as a country, have they found traction, wouldn't be where we are now. For instance, issues on water. We made strong recommendations on the crisis in our water sector. The last recommendations we've made recently are on the state-owned entities. We have recommended as well that there should be a holding company for all these state-owned entities, which is now part of the debate around this SOE bill. But we have our views as well as to how that bill is being implemented. It's not our intention that there should be a standalone. But it's a long story.
In fact, I mean, obviously we won't be able to go through all of them, but
yes.
Let's start with the last one you've mentioned, state-owned enterprises. I mean, it made sense at the beginning
yes.
when they said, no, you need public enterprises, and all sorts of arguments were put forward. Fast forward, 2025, we are now at a point where saying, actually, maybe it wasn't the best of ideas, given, of course, all the challenges we are all too familiar with. But what is your position? What are your concerns as the FFC with regard to whether or not these entities should report to their respective departments? In other words, those that deal with transport should be, the transport department should be dealing with them, and those who are in other areas or spheres, or like it's water and sanitation or any other portfolio for that matter, they should go there. What are your concerns in the main?
So currently there is a bill which is being debated in the public sphere with regards to the state-owned entity bill. Remember, as you rightfully said, there was the public enterprises, and now we're moving towards having a company, state-owned company, which will actually have oversight. But we're just concerned that in some of the ways in which these will be managed, it's not transparent. It's not clear why the president should be the shareholder. He is the president. It's not clear who is the shareholder's representative. That needs to be defined. It's not clear as well why this company should, from the word go, be funded by public money, and yet it is not subject to the Public Finance Management Act. So if we're going to fund a company, it needs to be subject to transparency. So we're concerned about that. So we went to that committee as well. So our views is that this company should be under National Treasury in some way. It must have oversight over these entities as a unit within Treasury. That is what we initially said. But now the bill itself is actually coming up now with a different company, which will be funded by public money and yet not subject to public scrutiny, which opens up avenues for opaqueness and possibly, corruption. We don't know. Because if it's public money, then there must be accountability. So the issue, Vuyo, with SOEs, as we have analyzed them as FFC, is that the governance thereof is not effective, is not efficient. And we support that there should be clear frameworks as to how these entities are going to be managed. Remember, the reason for us to have state-owned companies is to ensure that they manage public companies and investments. That is why now we are moving towards PPEs, because they have failed essentially, our public entities, to actually do these developmental agenda of driving government business.
I mean, given the fact that, we're talking about new legislation here, or amendments to current legislation, effectively, do you think these ambiguities are deliberate, or perhaps it comes with trying to fix something, but perhaps not, as far as you may be concerned, going far enough?
I think it's about all parties having a clear understanding of what we want to achieve. There seems to be a disjuncture or a misalignment between National Treasury, what are their intentions, the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, their intentions. So we need to come to a point where we agree what we want to achieve with this bill. So right now, our views with regards to the bill is that as it stands now, the bill as it stands now, we don't support it as a FFC because we see another state capture or corruption, possibly.
Let's talk about water. Water boards, you've been focused on this area as well, but just over the past year alone, I mean, I don't know how many protests we've had to cover across the length and breadth of the country. And perhaps more alarmingly, it seems that some of the main culprits are, in fact, I would argue, abundantly resourced municipalities, like the metros. Right? But you're seeing protests left, right, and center in the metros. Have you been able to put a finger on the problem as to what exactly is what is the root cause of the problems we are seeing affecting the water delivery generally?
So in terms of the local government framework, we have municipalities whose role is to provide water. And those municipalities are the ones who have failed. You will have heard recently where the Minister of Finance is threatening to withdraw or to withhold their equitable share if they don't come to some sort of agreement to make payments to the water boards. The problem there is that these municipalities are unable to receive their revenue from those local environments because of the environments that they are in. So what we do then is to give them an additional, allocations, conditional grants. But in spite of that, they have failed. Wow. So the issue, Vuyo, is that the way we have encapsulated or understood our local government is that we have assumed that they will be self-funding for a long time, that they will fund themselves.
Which many can't do.
Which many can do. And now, because they cannot fund themselves, they don't have enough money to pay for the water, even the electricity that they buy from the utilities. And then now what we have is they cannot deliver as well to the residents. So in our recommendations now, we are also saying, let's relook at the local government equitable share, because also we have pressures now in terms of urbanization as well. And that framework, the local government equitable share, does not take into account fiscal pressures as well. So we want to review the local government fiscal framework as it stands now, because clearly local government as it stands has not delivered, because maybe the assumptions that we made 30 years ago has not really come to fruition now. So there are many challenges in local government, but also what are some of the factors that are sort of compounding the whole thing is the issue of coalition governments. We have municipalities now over 60 in the country that there is no clear winner. These are hung municipalities where there are disagreements as to how to spend the allocations that are being made to them. So in these municipalities, then what you have is that there are policy or disagreements as to what to do with the money that is coming from national. What happens is then that service delivery suffers. So there is no collection of refuse, there's no water, services, there's nothing, because the municipality councils are fighting amongst themselves. So we raise that as an issue to say, even though the intergovernmental fiscal relations framework for the past 30 years, it has been stable, predictable, but now, because of coalition governments, the whole apple cart has been upset.
Hopefully someone is listening, but that's all, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Let me thank you for coming through. Really appreciate it. Dr. Nombeko Mbava was the chairperson